In 1966, England got its kicks. But for 60 years now, it's been frustrating. And we're still waiting. I hope I see us lift it before I die. In Mexico, we were 2 up with 20 minutes to go, and somehow the Germans put in 3. In 74, in 78, we didn't even qualify. We just sat at home and sighed.
Now, there have been some fabulous World Cup songs over the years, but this one is a bit different. So it's basically a poem which was put together with music by a man that you may have heard of on the show before with John. Kirk Field is based in Newton Abbot. You might remember him talking to John about the books that he's written about the 90s rave scene. Morning, Kirk.
Good morning, Neil. Morning, Devon.
Loving this creation. So we'll talk about the song and the poem in just a moment, but tell us about you and the rave culture stuff. How did you actually get into that and writing about that?
I was, many years ago, I found myself as a barman working on what I thought was a children's party, and it turned out to be one of these acid house parties on the M25 in 1989. And I started writing about the positive aspects of what I saw there, the equality, the inclusion, the different races and genders all mixing together without any kind of problems at all, and to sort of balance the anti-tabloid coverage of it. And I decided to write it up in lockdown, and it's gone on to become the best-selling book on the 90s rave scene. It's called Rave New World: Confessions of a Raving Reporter. And it's just been a roller coaster ride, and I really appreciate the support that the Breakfast Show has given me over the last 3 years. Because 3 years ago this week it was released, it was published, and it's still in the charts, which is fantastic. And it set me off on a trajectory of storytelling and exploring spoken word performance, which includes poetry. I started to write what I call rave poems, celebrating the rave scene, and I performed them in festivals around the southwest. And then when it came to the World Cup, someone said to me, "You've got to be able to do a World Cup song." I said, well, I just thought I'd write a poem about all the hurt and my own story and my own generation story. I'm 64, so in 1966 I was alive and breathing, but I can't remember us winning the World Cup. And so I think there's a whole generation of us out there that have gone through this constant every 4 years disappointment, and I put it together in a poem, and some really esteemed musicians. And a female singer, Kate Van Dike, who's from the famous esteemed Van Dike family down in Plymouth. We got together and we put together this track, and we wanted it to be optimistic rather than jingoistic. So it's not chest beating; it's more browbeaten, actually, come to think of it. And we also wanted it to be non-bombastic. So we wanted it to be have an easy listening feel, like a Burt Bacharach feel. So I think it's the first ever World Cup song that's an easy listening spoken word genre.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the lyrics cut through because of its delivery as well. And you say Burt Bacharach, I mean, certainly the melody kind of does give you that feel. But, I mean, you know, it's called I Hope I See Us Lift It Before I Die. It kind of says it all right there, really, doesn't it?
It does, and you know what? It's something that's become more prescient and more poignant as the years have gone on, as I'm sure a lot of you, the listeners out there can appreciate. You know, when we were young, it's like we didn't get it in 1990. Well, never mind, we'll get it next time. Then with 94, we didn't even qualify, and then you move on, and there's been so many sort of almost and nearlies, and so it's getting to the stage now where I'm in my 60s, and I'm like, time's running out. You know, how many more World Cups have I got in me? And so that's what it came from. It's not a maudlin song. It's an optimistic song, because we've got to always have that hope. And as I say in the bridge of the song, English hope is clouded by doubt. And every time we're in with a shout, we always seem to get knocked out. But, we keep going back for more, don't we?
Well, it's always, it'll be next time. We'll win it next time. And again, it's just, year after, every 2 years, but depending on whether it's, Worlds and Euros and stuff like that. So, with regards to writing this as well, when did the moment come? Do you remember when you thought, actually, do you know what? I'll write this poem, but I'll actually put it to music? Because as you said, this is the first time it's ever been done.
Yeah. It was a situation where I did a track. I think about 20 years ago. I had a stab at it 20 years ago, and with that idea in, I hope I see I'll lift it before I die. But looking back, it was only half written then because there was more verses to write. And so I decided this time with the spoken word thing, with my profile going up, and people saying, "No, you've got to do a World Cup song." I said, "Well, I don't really want to do a song because my audiobooks, which I narrate myself." I think I was on the show last year. The audiobook for Rave New World won audiobook of the year in 2024, beating Stephen Fry and Alan Partridge, which is quite something. So it kind of dawned on me that whenever I sing, it doesn't really get very far, but when I speak, people listen. And so I thought I would redo the song that I originally did 20 years ago and update it with a different arrangement, a different singer. A female singer rather than me singing. Kate did a lovely job on it, and just me doing what people say I do best, which is tell a story.
So it just goes to show the power of speech, really. And when you've been talking about rave culture and the words that you choose to tell those stories, to recap things as well, why do you think that football inspires such strong poetry and storytelling?
Well, because it's the same thing. It's release, isn't it? It's escape. The dance floor's and a place to escape. We escape reality and the pressures that we've got. We get away and we lose ourselves in the lasers. I certainly lost myself in the lasers. I think a generation of us did. And football's the same thing. You'd go to the football. Traditionally, it was a working class thing. You'd go there and you'd shout, and that's the whole thing about shouting and screaming, and you release all of those demons. It's a good thing to do that. It's a good thing to be angry at the ref as long as it's not too malicious. And then at night, as soon as that final whistle blows, you forget about it and you go to the pub or you go for a pie and peas or whatever it is. But I think it's that both of those cultures share something that gives somebody an escape. And I think with what's going on in the world, that's not a bad thing.
Escapism is a term which has really come up an awful lot in more recent times, hasn't it, with what's going on? And I think this really does give people that opportunity whilst tapping into something that, whether they're an out-and-out football fan or not, everyone's got the passion and the emotion around. A lot of things do come to a standstill, don't they, when England are performing?
They do, and they come to a standstill, especially if you're a Virgin Media subscriber in Newton Abbot on Saturday night, because none of us had any Virgin Media to watch the football.
Oh.
So, yeah. So it was. So they're going to get a call as soon as he gets to 9 o'clock this morning. But yeah, so there's a lot of us out there. So it was like the old days. So I was listening to it on the radio, which is great actually. Rediscovering what it was like listening to radio. Because when I was a kid growing up, I wasn't allowed to stay up after 9 o'clock in the early 70s, and so I used to take the radio under my covers and put like a little earplug in and listen to BBC Sport on a Tuesday night. To listen to the FA Cup replays and things like that. And it was fantastic because there wasn't very much sport or certainly live football on television. And now it's got to the stage where there's too much. This World Cup is dragging on and on and on. It's only now it's starting to get interesting when it comes to the knockout stages. With the greatest respect to Cape Verde and Congo Republic, I don't really care who wins that game. I'm sure the best team did.
Well, I mean, everyone's, we're now getting to the sort of more competitive stage of it, that's for sure. But with regards to the poem, so I hope I see us lift it before I die. You've been performing it live as well. Where will you be performing it next?
Well, I hope to do it at Totnes Fringe I'm doing Totnes Fringe on the Sunday the 11th of July in Rothermore Square. We're going to do it out in the street. And there could be other places as well. Certainly, the further we go in the competition, the more opportunities I'll get to do it. But I'd like to do just a little bit of, I mentioned before about the rave poetry, Neil. I'd like to do just a little segment to show the listeners what kind of thing I mean. It's only going to take a second, but this is Hamlet's soliloquy done for a rave audience. To MC or not to MC? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mix to suffer the blings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms in the air like you just don't care, against a sea of double trouble and the rebel MC.
Brilliant. Kirk, thank you so much for coming back on the show, and good luck at Totnes Fringe.
Great, thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's BBC Radio Devon. Good morning.